It's no secret that the food system in America has changed a lot over the past 30, 40, 50 years. I mean, I'm a child of the 80s and 90s and definitely grew up eating Dunkaroos and Chef Boyardee and Kid Cuisine and High C and Yoo-Hoo. I mean, I didn't know what the word organic or non-GMO meant until like the past 10 or 15 years. I mean, we're learning more and more about the importance of clean ingredients and real whole foods. But let's be honest, the convenience factor is so important to a lot of families today because life is crazy. My guest today has infused his passion for entrepreneurship, organic and clean ingredients and foods, and convenience, and has created this revolutionary company that is growing in grocery stores across the country. Welcome to Business with Purpose. I'm your host, Molly Stillman of stillbeingmolly.com, and this show is all about bringing you the stories behind the brands, companies, and small businesses that are changing the world. Each week, I interview an entrepreneur, CEO, nonprofit director, community leader, or just an awesome person who is trying to make a positive impact, not only through their personal life, but also with their career. My goal is to show you that no matter what you do for a living, you can make an impact wherever you are. My guest this week is Adnan Durrani. He is the founder and CEO of American Halal Co., which wholly owns its flagship brand, Saffron Road. As a longtime social entrepreneur, Adnan was searching for a social enterprise that could bring people together. If you shop at Kroger, Whole Foods, Sprouts, pretty much almost any grocery store today, you can find Saffron Road products in those aisles. They are delicious and amazing. And honestly, I was so honored to have Adnan on the show today. I mean, his lifetime of experience in the food and beverage industry and his pioneering in so many areas when it comes to being innovative was fascinating. And this is one of my favorite conversations to date. So without further ado, on to my chat with Adnan. Adnan, welcome to the show.
Well, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I am honored to have you as a guest on the Business with Purpose podcast. I have to have a confession. So we recently got a Sprouts grocery store in our area, and I counted down the days until Sprouts was opening. Well, I guess actually at this point it's been open over a year, which is kind of crazy to me. But I love Sprouts. And so one of the things I love about Sprouts is they always have brands of foods that maybe I haven't tried or, just healthier options. And so I am a mom and a wife and I have 2 young kids. And so every now and then I love to just have some kind of just freezer meals in the freezer so that if I need a quick lunch or whatever. So about, I guess it was in the spring, I had seen some Saffron Road foods there in Sprouts. And so I picked it up. I hadn't tried it before. And it is the most delicious thing in the entire world.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And, our culinary team really prides themselves on the passion around, our motto is culinary excellence, that really the wow factor has to be the taste. And Sprouts has been a wonderful partner for us. We're pretty excited about their expansion as well.
Yeah. So it was my first time trying it, and I would never have known that it was like a frozen microwave meal, but because it just tasted so fresh and delicious. So I just have to say that right off the bat that I am a big fan. And the more that I kind of dove into who you are as a person and your entrepreneurial background, I'm so excited to have you on the show. So welcome and thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
Well, I want to just kick it off by having you give us the Adnan 101. So tell us who you are, where you're from, and how you got started, and how you got to where you are today.
You have 6 hours?
Do I have 6 hours? Yeah. Hey, I mean, I can get comfortable.
I'll give you the elevator pitch. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I started my career on the dark side. I was on Wall Street for many years and now I'm dating myself, during the go-go 80s. And when the original crash, the 87 crash happened, I was doing extremely well. And then I had my head handed to me. And at that time, I, saw enormous amount of malfeasance on Wall Street, which is much worse today than it was then. And had an epiphany of sorts, both spiritually, mentally, and financially. And I decided, hey, this really isn't for me. I kind of wanted to leave what I call the immediate gratification business and go into the delayed gratification business, which was being a venture capitalist or an entrepreneur, which I didn't know a lot about. And So I started a company called Vermont Pure Spring Water. And I should have known better. I mean, there's an old saying, how do you make $1 million in the wine business? You know the answer, right?
I don't.
You start with 10 million. And, so I didn't know that. And I thought it was such a utopian thing, like to move up to Vermont, the beautiful Green Mountains. Me and my wife started that company, and I thought, wow, it's going to be so easy to put water in a bottle and sell it and build it. And of course, I cut our teeth doing that. It was a lot harder to be an entrepreneur and make the trains run on time versus, being an investor or venture capitalist, judging other entrepreneurs as to why they're not performing on their budgets. So we really cut our teeth on that one. It was an amazing experience. We were the first, bottled water that had very strong environmental values around it, as well as the way we took care of the springs and the way we gave back to the state of Vermont in terms of the bridge. We had a nonprofit that supported a lot of the covered bridges and the streams that I'm passionate about up there. So that was our socially responsible model, and it took us quite a while, but we built it up to the second largest bottled water company in the Northeast. And then after that, my company, Condor Ventures, my venture capital company, I partnered with or got introduced to a gentleman named Gary Hirschberg at Stonyfield Farms. And just to let you know a little bit of the history of the way I look at consumer ventures, in food and beverage, because even when I was on Wall Street, we were funding mainly beverage companies in the natural organic area. So I've been in the natural organic sector for literally 30 years. And, this is why the food business is in my blood. This is my fourth food company. And when I got into bottled water back in the early 90s, I was told by all the experts that that's the worst category to go into. As a matter of fact, the chairman of Coca-Cola told me point blank, son, that, and he was a friend of mine. He said, this is not a good area to go into. Wake up. Americans drink soda, not bottled water. And the per capita of soda is going to go up tenfold the next 10 years. You really should be focusing on soda. And I just saw trends in Europe that were seminal. I saw a shift into bottled water. I saw radon and lead issues in the U.S. back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I just felt that was going to catch on. And we got very lucky. It did. Today, the per capita consumption of bottled water in the U.S. is above Europe, believe it or not. And then when I started doing yogurt, looking at the yogurt industry, a lot of Americans, especially a lot of the experts in the food business, said to me, Americans don't really eat yogurt. That's for something like people from India or Pakistan or Eastern Europe. And children, yuck, they'll never touch it, And I said, no, not if you look at the trends in Belgium and France and what's going on with real bacteria and acidophilus versus the gelatin yogurts we have here, I think there's a really good market for this. And so I ended up working with Gary at Stonyfield Farms, and we were the first principal investor there outside of the founders. And Gary introduced me to a group called Social Venture Network. And that was over 30 years ago now, actually. And it was an amazing group of entrepreneurs. I mean, I met Ben Cohen through that from Ben & Jerry's, Eileen Fisher. A lot of us were on this journey to better, I call it, really a journey for the betterment of humanity by creating businesses that were triple bottom line. And when we used to talk about that back then, 30 years ago, a lot of my investors or partners would look at me and say, what's social responsibility? What do you mean you're going to take a percentage of the profits like we did at Stonyfield? 10% of the profits went to a program called Profits for the Planet, which then gave back to community, gave back to preserving the environment. They said, why would you do that? They looked at us like we had 9 heads, And I said, no, this is actually a for-profit motive, being socially responsible, because it's something that I was taught by the Social Venture Network, a group of CEOs, which were 200 or 300 at the time. And we were like 30 or 40 entrepreneurs, and it grew to over 1,000 now, with some very prominent names as a member of our group. But in the early days, we were really being pioneers, trying to set a new trail for how businesses can operate and at the same time be compassionate, give back to all stakeholders, not just shareholders. So that was a whole new dynamic, and I learned a lot from Gary. I owe a lot to him. He really taught me about how you can connect social responsibility with a profit motive for business and have a very sustainable enterprise as well as enhanced brand value. And that was kind of my start in that whole path of redefining my life and redefining what I wanted to do. And for the past 30 years, I've devoted myself just to socially responsible enterprises.
It's absolutely incredible because you're just, like you said, you really are a pioneer in that area. And it's something that, 30 years ago, the average consumer didn't even know what that was. And,
Exactly.
I have to, you mentioned something that I think is also really interesting. And you said how you've been in kind of, especially in the natural and organic food space for 30 years. And this is a conversation I have had a lot here on the show about how, just we've seen this shift in consumer habits over the past 10 to 15 years. And in a lot of ways, it really started with food and how we see so much more the farm to table, and we see, this uptick in consumers demanding non-GMO products and organic and natural, and brands are responding. And you're seeing it in every different food category, beverage category. I mean, I actually had to laugh. I was at the gas station yesterday, and how all these, a lot of the alcohol companies are coming out with the spiked sparkling water.
Right.
Even Natural Light, Natty Light, like the cheapest beer I remember from college. Let's just be honest. Natty Light has a sparkling spiked beverage now. And I was like, really? Are you, like, who? Even
it's
Natty
like organic, it's like organic Doritos.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, the irony here. But all that to say that, 30 years ago, I'll be honest, there's no way I knew what organic and natural and non-GMO and all of that was. So what was it 30 years ago that you saw in the food space that everybody else didn't catch on for another 20, 25 years?
Well, I certainly think it helps to be lucky better than smart, and I got very lucky. The tsunami that came in the natural organic business, it was only a $200 or $300 million industry when we entered it, and today it's a $50 billion industry in the U.S. alone. So we got very fortunate. I did do a lot of research. So one of my things that I try to mentor entrepreneurs is make sure if somebody tells you it's too good to be true, it probably isn't. But if somebody tells you it's impossible and you've done your research and you really, investigated it, it could possibly happen. So, I'm always kind of a rebel in that, but with a cause, trying to really fight conventional wisdom, but at the same time looking deeply at research. So what I was seeing, and it wasn't just me, a number of colleagues, is we were seeing shifts in, not just fads or trends, but really shifts in lifestyles, both in Europe and here, and especially the wave was catching on here, where the obesity epidemic was taking off. You were seeing all sorts of problems with antibiotics in the food system. You were seeing really strong studies coming out about how certain organic products or healthier, clean label products had very good effects on health long term. So as we were looking at those, we saw those were really important. And then we also saw the consumer demand growing for organic. Organic was getting more and more farm acreage. The farmers were able to, when we started out at Stonyfield, there were a lot of farmers that did not want to switch to organic from mainstream dairy because they would lose a lot of money initially. It took 5 to 7 years to clean those fields up. But once they saw the opportunity, and the whole industry as a whole collaborated, the natural food industry, to help create that ecosystem for organic farmers, all of a sudden consumers had that availability of organic products. And that's where the critical mass was started to develop in the natural organic industry. So that's really what I saw. And I'll tell you, even with Saffron Road, what really excited me about it was I saw in Europe, a lot of halal foods moving extremely well. I saw the kosher industry here take off. And I knew that there were some interesting statistics around the American halal consumer that nobody was paying attention to 10 years ago when we started this company. And I did a white paper on studying that demographic and found out that it was a complete opposite of Europe. So, for example, in U.S., you have anywhere from 4 to 8 million American Muslims. They tend to be much more educated than the average American. According to Pew, 1 out of 5 American Muslim households has a PhD or MD in it. You think about your doctors, your engineers, your professors, your intellectuals. That was your Silicon Valley folks. Those are the folks that migrated here from Asia and India and so on, as opposed to in England, where there's 60% below the average education of an Englishman. And also their disposable income is 30 to 40% higher than the average American. And according to Gallup, the second most educated woman in America is an American Muslim woman after the American Jewish woman. So, these were a marketer's dream. I mean, to have a demographic, 4 to 6 million strong, $30 billion in buying power in food, and so educated and so wealthy, and 75% of them under the age of 40, and I said, nobody's appealing to that market. So that was kind of, I felt that there was definitely the ecosystem for that to develop here for a halal brand. And I saw how well the kosher industry did. And I said, we have an opportunity here. So when we started, a lot of colleagues and folks I know in the industry said to me, why are you focusing on millennials? Remember, this is going back to 2010 and 2011. And they said, you really shouldn't be doing that because they have no money. Plus they're brand shifters. They're not brand loyal. And wake up. America is an aging population. Baby boomers are the growth industry here, and they're continuing to be the biggest demographic for consumer brands to, focus on. And I said, yeah, that's true. And baby boomers will always be an aspirational part of Saffron Road. They'll always be a big segment of our consumer, for sure. But aspirational baby boomers, those looking for natural organic products that are clean label. However, millennials spend, even back then, 40% of their income on natural organic products, much higher than baby boomers, even though they have less income.
Yeah.
Secondly, they'll be getting older. They'll be getting married in future. They'll be having children. They'll be wanting to do stock-up trips at both Costco and Kroger and so on, not just at Whole Foods. And so it's that demographic that also is actually very brand loyal, but they're not getting their ads from Super Bowl commercials. They're getting them on Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest or in the tribes that they live in social media. And that's where you need to approach them, because if you do, they're virally very brand loyal. You just have to know how to approach them. So that was kind of our thesis back then. And, again, we got lucky.
Yeah.
The tsunami that came was the millennial demographic. So today, according to Goldman Sachs, millennials are the wealthiest and fastest growing demographic in America's history. I mean, they're $2 trillion in buying power. They're young. And because of the internet, because of the information age that we live in today, they're very dogged about discerning their values around food.
Yeah.
And we benefited from that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're seeing it, millennials shopping responsibly in just about every category, and how social responsibility and transparency is really important to them. Sustainability is really important to them. And, I guess, I don't know if it's just like older crotchety people like to talk badly about millennials, and people like to say, millennials, like, they're lazy and blah, 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 blah. And I'm not finding that to actually be true. And I'm finding a lot of millennials are really working hard, and they demand more, which makes them to some people think like, they think they're entitled. And it's not that they think they're entitled. It's just that they see a better future. And so they demand that in the companies that they buy from. And they're, I think one of the things that you kind of touched on is just how millennials have a lot of buying power, and they're going to get older and they're going to, going to influence their kids. And so that's a huge demographic that some brands are kind of missing out on. And there's actually, I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, is how Whole Foods has an entire study now that indicates that kind of millennials are willing to pay a little bit more for better quality and brands that are sustainable and transparent and socially responsible. So,
Exactly.
What have you guys done at Saffron Road? And for anybody who's listening who maybe isn't familiar with Saffron Road, can you talk, I guess, kind of give a little bit about the brand and what makes you guys so different?
Absolutely. And just in that context, by the way, I'm glad you brought up that Whole Foods study, which was leaked to the press a few weeks ago. So Whole Foods did do an extensive study on its shoppers, especially, post the Amazon acquisition. They have a lot of resources to really data mine what their consumers are buying, what they're attracted to. And what they found out was that 80% of Whole Foods customers considered quality the top factor. 80%. This is the millennial consumers, millennial customers of Whole Foods. 65% say transparency is a top factor, and 70% will pay extra for high quality foods, especially healthy, ready to eat meals. And 42%, 45% have tried a special diet like gluten-free, halal, kosher, keto, non-GMO. So it's interesting because the study that came out from Whole Foods, and we were just up at their headquarters a couple of weeks ago reviewing some of this information with them, it fits perfectly into Saffron Road's consumer. And this was really exciting for us when the study came out because we didn't know anything about it till it was leaked in the press. So obviously now we can speak to it. And at Saffron Road, we're what we call a natural organic platform brand. So we have basically three components of our brand. The first one is frozen, which is natural organic frozen entrees, as well as nuggets. And everything we do is antibiotic free with no antibiotics ever is our motto. And everything we do with beef and lamb is grass fed. We were the first non-GMO verified frozen entree in the world. We were the first certified humane entree in the world, which means that, we had to go through the project to get non-GMO verification, which was grueling. It's even tougher than organic, and we got it. And we New York Times wrote about us doing that way back when. And certified humane means, and even humanely raised, is all the farms that supply us have to go through a very grueling audit that they're treating the animals with proper animal welfare. And we use very, very high standards for that. And everything that we do is third-party certified. Yeah. So that's kind of our frozen entree segment for Saffron Road. And then we have a shelf-stable element, which is our simmer sauces and shelf-stable meals, which we've recently launched in Costco, like a chickpea masala that's in a pouch, which environmentally is a very low carbon footprint. It's non-GMO verified. In 60 seconds, you have a complete meal in front of you. Not only does that play well in the plant-based protein environment, but also the fact that it's very clean label in that segment. And then the third segment we have are snacks. So we're the leader. In chickpea snacks, there's about 6 other brands out there right now. We're by far the national leader in that category. And that is, again, really fitting in our brand funnel of organic chickpeas, non-GMO verified, very healthy, very clean label. Chickpeas are one of the only snacks, I think only other than edamame, that has more protein than fat. So it's, again, a very nice complement to our portfolio. But what I like to say is, like, when I started Saffron Road, we looked at a different bunch of brand names for it. And I actually originally was thinking of the Silk Road, but that was already taken because, I attended many years ago Yo-Yo Ma's concert at the mall in Washington, where he brought, literally the year after 9/11, he brought over 150 artisans from 150 countries, artisans together to celebrate the commonality of cultures on the Silk Road. And I was blown away by that. And I thought, wow, that's really awesome, and if I could create a brand that did that and brought together different cultures, different faiths, different, ethnicities to celebrate and champion each of those cultures and the wonderfulness of all of those different tenets and values that those cultures brought, that would be something for me would be really a mission. And so that's how Saffron Road started. It was really about creating a company or a responsible brand on a mission of collective progress, not only for the betterment of humanity, but to inspire, connect, and respect, different global citizens through a shared love of world cuisines. And I felt in that environment, especially more now today, there's so much dissension and polarization among different folks from different countries. We see what's going on. And so now I feel our mission is really coming to even stronger because we have so much more affinity among consumers, especially millennials who are very multicultural, who are very well traveled, who even travel through the internet to different places, learn about different cultures, different languages, different faiths. And we thought, if we could create a pluralistic model that did that, that would be for us really what we're all about. And I'm very happy to say that's what we've done with Saffron Road.
Yeah. And there's something to really be said about just, there's power in what happens around the dinner table, or there's power in what happens when you get a group of friends or family together, all different people, and you sit around and you share a meal, or you're even sitting in a living room and eating some snacks. There's just food naturally brings people together. And so when you kind of fuse that beauty of delicious, multicultural, multi-ethnic food along with, fellowship among people, there's just something really powerful about that.
Absolutely. And what we often say, and I think Whole Foods, after us telling this for 4 years, finally caught on, which is that, a lot of folks say, well, what is your brand? Is it an organic brand? Is it an Indian brand? Is it a Thai or, Mexican brand? I mean, what are you really, what bucket do you fit into? And we always say to them, we're not that linear. The new dynamic. I mean, that's old school thinking. The new school thinking, and that's really where we fit in, is that we're part of a mindful food tribe. And especially millennials and definitely aspirational baby boomers thrive on food tribes today because what they are they live in social identity with food tribes because various food tribes thrive on adventure, specific dietary needs, global culturism. They're very value-centric in their food tribe. So that food tribe that we have at Saffron Road emotionally connects with consumers. It says it's a brand for me. It's deep emotional engagement. This is what we used to have at Stonyfield as well. There's viral advocacy that we have because we're very active. We're very digitally savvy in terms of the way we reach our consumers. And it extends beyond a specific product or even a specific cuisine. It really has to do with the tribal affinity around distrusting large companies that aren't authentic. And since what we do, not only in terms of our recipes and the chefs that we celebrate and partner with, is very authentic. I mean, our products, we import, whether if it's Thai products, we're importing Thai green curry from Thailand. If it's Indian products, we're getting the highest level of Silka basmati rice from India. When it's Mexican products, we're actually using nixtamal corn the way the Mayans used to do. We're very authentic in that respect. And at the same time, we're very clean label. And that's something that young consumers that are very active on social media really love. And you have to be bulletproof because if you're not transparent about these values and about the sourcing standards and the claims that you make, you'll be found out. You'll be busted. So
Yeah.
the nice thing about us is when our consumers dig deeper below the veil and find out what Saffron Road's all about, they find out that we are the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, what you just said kind of brings to mind. I don't know if I'm sure you are because of the field that you work in. But recently, we saw the big controversy with Fairlife milk that is owned by, I think their parent company is Coca-Cola, and Fairlife has always kind of, been said that they're great, and then basically a huge kind of animal abuse scandal came out, and I mean it was just all over my social media feeds, and my son is lactose intolerant, and Fairlife was for our family. I was like, oh, this is a great option for lactose-free milk, and oh, look, it's they're transparent and all this kind of stuff. But then that news came out, and I looked at my husband one day and I was like, man, now I got to find a new milk to buy. Like I was like, and I haven't bought it since then because I just now that I know better, I'm going to do better, and so I'm until they show that they're going to be more transparent, that they're going to clean up what they're doing and all that kind of stuff. Like I'm not going to support that company with my dollars. And so, some people might think that that's really extreme, but when you buy based on your values,
I don't. I say go girl. That's what I would do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Adnan. Thank you. But yeah, I mean that's consumers when they find out, like if something is not right, if something smells fishy, if something is not adding up, like money talks. Yeah. And
this is something Gary Hirschberg taught me. He used to call it WME, weapons of mass enlightenment.
Yeah.
He used to say that businesses have the capability and ability of businesses to be a change agent is much stronger than any church. Because it's not bogged down by religion. It's much stronger than any government, which is bogged down by bureaucracy. And the businesses can really influence politicians and others to act in their interests if they act for social good. And that it's a very powerful tool, that I know, and I have enormous amount of respect in knowing the privilege that myself and my fellow CEO colleagues have when we're at this podium. I wouldn't be talking to you today if I wasn't a CEO, right? So I've been given that as a blessing. And so we take this, our whole team takes this very seriously in terms of what we communicate and how true we are to those values. And, part of what we do in our social responsible mission at Saffron Road is we do a lot of give back campaigns. We do a lot. We connect with a lot of charitable organizations. So, for example, we are partners with Whole Planet Foundation, which is Whole Foods Foundation as well, where they've created for over 3 million women microloans as women entrepreneurs throughout the globe.
That's awesome. That's
over
awesome.
20 countries. We partner with Whole Kids, which is part of the Whole Planet Foundation, which we brought salad bars to schools, especially disenfranchised schools in African American communities where the nutrition, because of the communities and towns they lived in, there was like no nutrition at all. So we brought them organic salads. And during Ramadan, which is the holy month of Muslims, we have a 30-day give back campaign where we give $1 back for each product purchased into a foundation with a Kickstarter campaign called Launch Good. And in that campaign, we had two wonderful campaigns that grew out of terrible tragedies, like where we had the shooting of the Pittsburgh synagogue, the massacre that occurred there. We ended up raising more money, $500,000 for victims than any other group for that synagogue. And it was a wonderful collaboration of folks of different faith in solidarity for compassion, for justice, for the betterment of humanity. And similarly, when the New Zealand crisis happened in the Christ Church, we were part of Launch Good's $2.7 million campaign that they raised there. So we found that this really strengthens the mission that we have, which is in this environment we're living in today. We like to think of really looking at a different kind of light, an enlightenment light that brings people together to support each other and have compassion and respect for each other, and also to champion the commonality of various cultures.
I'm going to take a quick break from my chat with Adnan to thank our sponsor of the show, and that is No Issue. No Issue is the online platform for designing and ordering custom sustainable packaging for your business or brand. They have a low minimum order quantities, worldwide delivery in 3 weeks or less for free. And on staff, they have a team of designers ready to help you make your customized sustainable packaging look beautiful. Sustainability is everything to them because everything is compostable, recyclable, and the paper products are FSC certified. But having that team of designers on staff means that your sustainable packaging doesn't have to be ugly. So if you have a business or brand that ships things at any time, visit noissue.co, that's noissue.co, and use the coupon code PURPOSE15 for 15% off your first order. Now back to my chat with Adnan. You're also leaving such a legacy, but you're setting an example for other companies. And this is something that I think is a point that can't be made enough. And it's that when businesses change the landscape of how to do business, it forces other businesses to have to step up and do it. And so it really does create this ripple effect of change. And so 30 years ago, when you shared that, the natural and organic food industry was, it was only like a $200 million industry, something like that. And then now today it's a $50 billion industry. And that's because there are companies like a lot of the ones that you were a part of that really paved the way, and consumers began to go that way. And
absolutely, actually, that's really interesting you bring up that point, Molly, because there's something that came out a couple of years ago, a statistic that blew me away. Boston Consulting Group and AC Nielsen did a study, and what they found out was that 43% of the growth of the $800 billion food and beverage industry is coming from small companies like Saffron Road. Let me repeat that. 43% of the growth of the $800 billion food and beverage industry in the U.S. is coming from small companies. If you told me that 5 years ago, I would have said, no way. If you told me that 10 years ago, I'd say you're crazy, because in the old days, it was Frito-Lay, Pepsi, Campbell's, General Mills. They controlled the shelf. There was, you could have very little impact, But today, because of the information technology age, because of the internet, because consumers are much more demanding about making sure they're not having the wool pull over their eyes and buying real products with real ingredients, you have this wonderful, enlightenment going on. It's like a renaissance in the food business. And I'll tell you out there for your audience, for young entrepreneurs, especially female entrepreneurs, there's so much more opportunity than there's ever been. There's so much more capital available now where venture firms are dying to get into this segment with startups and with companies that are appealing to values around the food system or even any consumer product that has a value-based center to it, because they see for the first time a crack and an opening where you're seeing growth come from smaller startups really chipping away, not just biting at the heels, but chiseling away at major market share by big CPGs. So there is tremendous opportunity out there to have a values-based brand like Saffron Road.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. That is an incredible statistic. And honestly, it makes sense to me because when I am when I'm at Sprouts and I'm doing my grocery shopping, I read my labels and one of the things that my husband always, of course, like rolls his eyes at me because like I'll stand there in the aisle and I'll be like reading about the company and he's like, oh my goodness, will you just pick out the pasta like or something or whatever.
I drive my wife crazy with the store checks. Believe me, I know the feeling.
Yeah. I mean, I because I care and for me, it really amped up when I started having children and because when
that's the game changer.
Yes.
That's the game changer. That's why once millennials, we thought this 10 years ago, once millennials started having families, we knew there was going to be a mega shift, and it's already occurring.
Yeah, because, when I got pregnant, I just suddenly was hyper aware of everything I was putting into my body. And so because I'm all of a sudden, it's not just me that I'm feeding, but I'm feeding this other child. And then when my daughter was born, I just became so aware of, okay, what ingredients is there unwanted sugar in there? Is there chemicals in there that don't need to be? And I just became really, really aware of it. And so, I don't claim to be perfect, and my kids still eat Chick-fil-A sometimes, guys. It's just sometimes
Chick-fil-A's pretty good.
It's pretty delicious. It's pretty delicious. Let's be honest, guys. But so I don't claim to be perfect, but if I'm buying food that I'm bringing into my house, I'm going to make sure that it has good ingredients in it because I don't want to just pump my kids full of unnecessary things that they don't need to have in their systems. And that's just something that's important to me and my family. And I realize that that's not something that's going to be a priority for everybody. But, I think that the more and more that we learn about food safety and we learn about the importance of clean, whole, organic ingredients and things like that, and the impact it has on our health and our mental health, our physical health, spiritual health, all those kinds of things. Food is just interconnected into everything we do. It's just, you're gonna continue to see that trend grow even more, and so that actually.
The other thing I want to mention to you is that the beautiful thing about today versus 10 or 20 years ago is, as American consumers, we're very lucky. We have so many great choices now.
Yeah.
We didn't have these choices before. So you don't have to just go to Whole Foods or Sprout. Of course, we encourage you to go there because that's where Saffron Road has very strong distribution. But also, like Kroger is one of probably our biggest partner now.
Oh, wow.
And we just launched in Walmart, and it's been an incredibly successful launch in 4,300 stores in all 50 states. And it's on fire, Saffron Road at Walmart, as well as at Costco. And so, you're seeing Costco and Kroger's sales of natural organic products have surpassed Whole Foods. So it's interesting that consumers today in America have more availability of a lot of these smaller, newer brands in their mainstream outlets than they've ever had in history. So because you have those choices today, consumers can be discerning. Not just millennials. This aspirational baby boomers are making pretty tough choices, and brands need to be authentic and transparent. That's why we say at Saffron Road that not only do we explore international cuisines that combine, bold flavors from all around the world, but it's really about high quality, wholesome ingredients, which are better for the environment. We call it a journey to better, which is better for the environment, better for the farmers, better for the animals, better for your health, but most of all, better tasting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that kind of leads to sort of my next question, and that is, you really have, I thought it was really interesting that not only did you notice the food trends in Europe that led you to kind of the natural and organic industry, and then you noticed the trends in Europe towards bottled water away from soda, and then you noticed the trends in Belgium and France with yogurt, and then you got involved with Stonyfield. Like Europe apparently is sort of like the setting the example, and I think it's
very good bellwether.
It's really interesting that you say that though too, because one of my big passions and one of the things that I talk about a lot on this podcast is the importance of buying ethical and fair trade products in the fashion and jewelry industry, the home goods industry. I'm really really passionate about
Huge
that.
trend now. Yeah.
And a lot of it started in Europe. And you saw a lot of European brands and Europeans in general be really passionate about this. I mean, the organization Fashion Revolution, which is started the movement, getting consumers to ask who made my clothes, to brands on social media. I mean, they started in the UK, and so. I think it's interesting because you're starting to see that here in the United States with clothing and home goods and jewelry and things like that. So
they have much stronger consumer protection regulations over there. Look at what's going on with Google and Facebook now in Europe, right? I wish they would do that here.
Yeah.
Because they're much more concerned about consumer protection over there than we are over here.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, what are the trends you kind of are predicting for next year and into the next 5 to 10 years? What do you think we're going to see here in the United States?
Well, I think this whole concept around, humane animal welfare for livestock is really an important one. And I think animal welfare will become a leading trend in the next 2 to 5 years. That's why everything we do with lamb and beef is grass-fed. I also think that this whole, what I call, my opinion, irrational exuberance around plant-based protein meat alternatives is going to shoot its wad and kind of flatten out. I think there's been way too much attention to that category. Americans are by far still meat eaters. I mean, 75% of Whole Foods customers are meat eaters. They're not Birkenstock hippies. They're yuppies looking for protein. And that trend is going to stay. Now, the plant-based meat alternative movement, I think, is going to continue to grow dramatically. But even if it grows 500%, it's just a tiny slice of the overall industry.
Yeah.
And I think so. There's a lot of retailers that are creating all this shelf space, both in frozen and dry, for these plant-based protein meat alternatives. But at some point, it's going to catch up to them, and it's going to hurt them if they're not conscious about how that could all fall apart. Because first of all, and I'm not going to mention brand names, but a lot of those meat alternative companies are highly processed foods. They're using what I call protein isolates, and they're very unhealthy. They're not really, in my opinion, natural or organic.
Yeah.
This is what happened with the Atkins craze. This is what happened with soy protein years ago when everyone thought it was so great, and then it turned out it can cause cancer. It's interesting. Michael Pollan, who I respect a lot, has called this whole movement in this plant-based protein processed products. He said he calls it nutritionism. He says fracturing perfectly excellent whole foods like peas and carrots into components and reassembling them into something less nutritionally valuable. He goes, you're almost certainly better off eating carrots and edamame, young soybeans that actually can be eaten by people, than you are ingesting mashed up, isolated components of them. So all I'm saying is that Caveat emptor, beware. What you're eating, just because it's hot right now or on trend, doesn't mean it's healthy, especially if it's heavily processed. And if you're going to eat plant-based protein, this is what our chefs, especially John Umlauf here, our head of culinary operations, who's a chef, always stresses. He says, look, if you want good plant-based protein, eat plant-based products that are clean labeled, you're using real plant-based products, like whether it's peas or whether it's carrots or whatever the driving plant is. Make sure it's clean labeled, not that it's processed, and you'll have a healthier meal. So I think there will be at some point an epiphany in that segment the next couple of years, and there will be healthier products coming out that are plant-based protein, that are truly plant protein, as well as I think there will be a focus on animal welfare.
That is, I'm not going to lie, that is fascinating. And I could listen to you tell me food trends for the next hour and a half. That is fascinating. Yeah, because I've been a little wary. I mean, I make it, I always say, I'm like, if you want to be vegan, if you want to be vegetarian, more power to you. That just means more meat for me. I
do believe in the flexitarian diet, which is, I think, what some brands are all about. Like Beyond Meat is doing a wonderful job focusing not on vegetarians, but focusing on meat eaters like myself who might want to eat. We have meatless Mondays, and a couple days a week we'll eat vegetarian.
Yeah.
So that's really their focus. And I think that's a really good trend, and that's a very healthy thing to do for the environment and for human health. I just want to be cautious about consumers diving into these things without understanding what they're eating.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I completely agree. I mean, there are definitely times that I love, we do Meatless Monday sometimes. And periodically, a couple times my husband and I have done the Daniel fast, which is, so that means the Daniel fast is great. And so there's a lot of great ways to kind of balance out your, eating meat and then also eating, all whole plant-based products. So it's like everything in life. It's all about balance and just really finding what works for you, what works for your family, and finding a healthy rhythm so you're not going to all these extremes. And, I'll be honest, like I think it's really interesting what you said about just that idea of just because something is sort of hot and on trend doesn't mean it's necessarily healthy. And so there's all these buzzwords that are not necessarily regulated. And,
like keto, I think is a great thing.
Yeah.
But to me, it's a fad that 2 years from now, if you ask somebody what's keto, they probably even know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, so if you do it in a way that is clean and healthy and what you're doing and really looking at the ingredients, I think that's fine. But it's when you're just buying into a trend or buying into a food movement because you think it's the hip, healthy thing to do, but you're not actually looking at what you're putting into your body, that's when you need to be cautious.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, I have to ask this question because this is a question that I just am always really interested in to know the answer to, especially when it comes to entrepreneurs like yourself who just you live, eat, like literally, no pun intended, and breathe your passion and all of that. Is there something in your childhood, teenage years, early adulthood that you think kind of most led you to where you are today?
Yeah, I don't think I was ever thinking about being an entrepreneur as my career choice when I was in college or certainly when I was on Wall Street. But yeah, when I was a kid, when I was young, like even in high school, in even the earlier days of high school, I had several businesses. I had a landscaping business, a lawn mowing business. I had a delivery company. I had a little candy business as well. I had 2 newspaper routes in the mornings. So when I look back, it's funny you asked that question because I was thinking about this a couple of years ago and talking to some other, colleague CEOs, and a lot of us had those newspaper routes. And we're like, oh, wow, maybe that's what started, our entrepreneurs and was these activities we did when we were kids that we never realized manifested themselves later in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, where do you think the social good component came in? Like, was it just you were tired of the Wall Street rat race and you wanted to do something, with a kind of really having a business with purpose, so to speak? Or was it something that maybe your parents instilled in you? Where did that kind of passion for caring for others come from?
Yeah, I think some of it was cultural. I was very lucky. I had very strong, spiritual foundation when I was very young. But I think that, what I saw, and I'm not proud of it because I was part of it, but the greed that I saw on Wall Street in the 80s really took me to a place, like I mentioned when I had the epiphany, that was a very dark place. And I had a bottom of sorts spiritually, and I said, wow, this is just not for me. Something here in my soul is really restless. And I was very blessed to be able to introduce to Gary and Social Venture Network and all of those social entrepreneurs who said, you know what, even though they were totally different from me. I mean, I came from a very conservative family. And Gary used to joke and say I was the only suit at the food shows. So that's how I was back then, and I saw these guys, which were a bunch of hippies, and I say these are a bunch of, socialists who became capitalists, but actually their values were identical to my values, and that's what I really identified with, that their values of having a holistic approach to business and life, of having life balance in terms of what you're doing every day in your business and what you're doing every day in your personal life, that there was a harmony there that was very comforting and serene to me. And I felt whole in that. And so when I decided to make that leap into that category, it was really because of the place I'd been, which was so dark. And I knew there was a better way, and there was something in my soul that said, look at all these wonderful entrepreneurs that are doing so much good out there, that there is a profit motive to being socially responsible. And I was very lucky. I was very blessed that the food industry is one of the few industries where you have a direct correlation between your brand value, your price on the shelf, your elasticity, your retrial, and the social good that you do. In other words, there's a direct way we measured it with going way back to the Cone Group reports that we participated back in, where Cone Marketing had actually measured causality around brands, and we were one of the leading brands in that study. And so I was lucky early on, I could see very clearly that if you had a brand that had very strong values, and had a social component, you would get a very strong following among consumers. You would get strong brand affinity. And, that's what we like to say at Saffron Road, that we sell values for value.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. Adnan, that is just... That really shows me even a little bit more about kind of who you are and what drives you. And it's just so clear that all the things that I've read about you and all the things that I've seen people say about you, just how generous and thoughtful and hardworking you are. It's so evident.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
In everything that you do. I mean, you've even been able to, you've met some of my kind of personal heroes. The fact that you've met Eileen Fisher, she's just somebody who oh my goodness.
She's an amazing salt of the earth person. I'll tell you, Eileen is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
She's really helped so many young, especially female entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And, she's really been amazing. Her whole team is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. And you had the opportunity to meet President Barack Obama, which is just, also.
I don't know how you found out about that, but that's good. Yeah.
Hey, I do a little light internet stalking before my
intel, right?
I've done my intel. So, yeah, it's just so clear, just the work that you're doing is impacting the lives of so many people. And I'm just really, thank you for what you do, because it really does change lives in such an amazing way. So thank you.
And thank you, Molly, for what you do, because you give a voice that's really needed. And I'm not just talking about myself, but a lot of the other interviews you've done. That's a really important voice and narrative to have out there, especially during this environment. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you. That means a lot. All right. Well, this has been amazing. But before we go, I am going to just ask a couple fun get to know you questions. It's my listeners' favorite part of the show, just to kind of, get to know you a little bit more in a lighthearted way. And the first question I was going to ask if you had to eat the same meal for dinner every night for the rest of your life, what would it be? And then I was like, wait, he owns a food company. So for somebody that maybe has not tried a Saffron Road product, if you had to eat the same, you can pick, maybe one from each of your categories, the frozen, the snacks, and the prepared. So what would be like the thing, if you had to eat it every single day for the rest of your life, what would you eat?
Our chicken biryani is awesome, so in the frozen. So the chicken biryani for me is my favorite product on the frozen. And then in the snacks, it's the sea salt chickpeas, which are organic chickpeas. And in the shelf stable, it's our chickpea masala, which is a chickpea meal, which is, mostly in Costco nowadays. Those would be my three products, number one in each category.
All right. I like it. You had no qualms. You were like, I know exactly what I'm talking. So
right.
I trust you. And now I'm hungry. So I'm going to have to go to Sprouts after this. It's right by my office. So right. I'm going to need to get that. Okay. My second question is, what is a dream that you have yet to achieve? You've achieved a lot in your life. What is a dream you've yet to achieve?
That's a good question. And I probably have a few that I have to contemplate over. But I certainly think that, I do think there's a lot of opportunity for folks, minorities and women especially, and people of color that are not getting a fair shake in this environment. And one of my dreams would be to create a socially responsible company or foundation that helps inspire a lot of those individuals. I've done a lot of that mentoring in my past, recently being an entrepreneur, especially with Saffron Road. I don't really have the bandwidth or time to do it, but I would like to get involved sometime in the future of creating a foundation that really helps inspire minorities and people of color to become successful entrepreneurs, because I think there's tremendous opportunity for them.
Yes.
And I think they're being left behind.
Yeah. Absolutely. I could not agree more. And I think that is an incredible vision. And I have a feeling that knowing who you are, I have a feeling that you're going to make it happen. So
hopefully with your blessing. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. All right. My next question is, if you were a professional athlete, think baseball player, and you are walking up to the plate, what is your walk-up song? You know, that song that just like hypes you up. The whole stadium is hyped up right now.
Yeah, Rocking the Casbah by The Clash. And I used to be in a rock band in college, so I love that song.
Adnan, you were in a rock band in college?
Yes.
There's so much that
I was a drummer. So.
You were a drummer. Oh man, do you still play the drums sometimes?
I wish I did. I gave it up many, many years ago, but I should probably go back into it. I'll probably drive my wife crazy with all the noise in the house. But.
You should totally do that. You should I mean, I just like it. Like food CEO by day, backup
by night. Yeah.
Like, drummer by night. That's amazing. Okay, and then my last question. This is the question I ask all my guests, and it is, Adnan, what does it mean to you to run a business with purpose?
It means that I'm blessed every day to come in and have the privilege to be able to make a change, both in the environment out there currently, as well as with our team, as well as to inspire our team to go out there and make a difference in the world and get inspired by them and by consumers. One of the beautiful things I have is I often get to read the comments that come into us from passionate fans of ours, and sometimes they bring tears to my eyes. I mean, the way that a lot of consumers talk about Saffron Road and the way we've been able to change their life for their betterment is really inspiring for me. It's what keeps me going.
That's incredible. I love that. And I bet that those kinds of comments and messages just further fuel your passion for what you do. So, Adnan, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's truly an honor to sit and chat with you today.
Same here. Thanks a lot, Molly. Wish you all the best.
I told you this was a good episode. Oh, man, it was such a great conversation. I could have talked to him forever. So grateful to Adnan for coming on the show. Now, I would love to know something that you learned from this episode. So let me know on social media. You can tag me at Still Being Molly or at Business with Purpose Podcast on Instagram or Facebook. And be sure to use that hashtag Business with Purpose Podcast. Thanks again to our sponsor, No Issue. Check out noissue.co for all your sustainable packaging products and use the coupon code PURPOSE15 for 15% off. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. If you're a first-time listener of the show, welcome. Be sure to visit the archives for past shows featuring so many incredible people who are literally changing the world with what they do for a living. And if you're a regular listener, thank you for your support. It truly means the world to me. Be sure to head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Radio Public, Stitcher, Overcast, basically wherever you listen to podcasts, and click that subscribe or follow button. And if you have a moment, would you take a moment to leave a review? Leaving a review really does help me to know what you're liking and how the show is impacting you. This show is edited by my incredible husband and executive producer, John Stillman, with support from Kelly Dalton, and the music is by Mark Killian of Third Wheel Media. Thanks so much for listening, and go do something good with purpose on purpose.